right. Hello, hello. Welcome to Tower Garden Chat. I'm here. This is Doug. I'm here with Matt Pittman. We are going to be talking about some cool stuff tonight. We're excited about it. We both grow on the Juice Plus Tower Garden hydroponic aeroponic system, and we tonight are going to be talking about going from, I don't know, I guess we'll call it seed or seedling to plate, the whole process. We're going to share a couple of recipes. We're going to talk through them, and we're going to talk about how we grew the produce, and you're going to see some pictures and things like that. So hopefully along the way, you're going to learn a little bit and get a little inspiration for what you're doing with your tower garden. So Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Doug. Thanks for
Yeah?
having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so tell me, you're going to be sharing a little bit of a recipe. Tell us a little bit about what you've been growing and what you want to share.
Yeah, so my tower's actually in a little bit of transition. So I have quite a few empty cells right now, but I almost always have collard greens on my tower because it is one of my favorite vegetables. It's really, really good for you. It always reminds me of home and growing up because when I was a kid, my grandmother always had collards growing in her garden, no matter what time of year. And that's one of the other reasons I really like it, that I love to grow collards, is because nothing phases them. They are.
Are you like a Southern guy? Have you had a grandma making collard greens?
Absolutely. Grew up, didn't love them as a kid, came to love them more in my teenage and college years. But I'm a Southern boy, born and raised. And, when my grandmother made collards, they cooked for at least a day, usually more. And there was generally a very large piece of pork fat in the pot. Right. And then, when she cooked them right, it was like pudding. I don't cook them that way. Number one, I don't have that kind of patience. And number two, it's really not great for you. By the time we ate them.
Wait till they see this recipe. So when we were starting to talk about this, you're like, yeah, I got these collard greens. I made some collard greens. And I'm like, oh no, not collard greens. Because, my brand is, I'm kind of all about like heart health and all this stuff. But then Matt sends me over the recipe and I'm like, oh, look at this. This is a really healthy looking recipe. And it's funny because collard greens are kind of, like you said, they usually have like a bunch of pork in them. They might just have pure straight up butter and all kinds of stuff in there. They're not good for you at all when they're made like that. But They're also very common in the health community and the vegetarian community because not only we're going to see this recipe in a second, but even when we just look at Matt's collard greens there on his tower garden, I mean, look at the size of those leaves. So a lot of times, in addition to cooking the collard greens, you can also use them for like a wrap. So instead of bread, you can make like a healthy wrap and stuff with them too. So that's pretty common.
Yeah, I've not mastered that art yet but I do, I like them big and I let them grow. And the other thing I love about collards is they will keep growing. So, I mean, I have picked twice off of those plants. There's actually two plants, the one in the foreground, and then there's one on the back of the tower in this image. We've eaten off of those plants at least twice, and I will probably harvest and be able to give to my mother-in-law. She loves collards, but she won't process them. So I harvest them and chop them and prep them for her and take them down to her. But then we'll eat a good 2 or 3 or 4 more meals off of those at least.
Now, when you harvest a big leaf like that and you're prepping it, do you cut that main spine out or is that also cooked?
So both. So you actually, the recipe calls for processing them, cut the stems out, and you chop the stems with some onion and celery. And I'm not sure if there's celery in it. I think I've put celery in it before, but you chop them up, like dice them up real small, and you pre-cook them. So this is my favorite recipe because it's instant pot. It's an instant pot recipe, so it's quick. The prep work takes a little bit, but the recipe itself is quick. Number two, with the stems and the onions that you cook, there's texture. So there's a little bit of that crunch in there, and then and there's a lot of flavor because you use apple cider vinegar or vinegar of your choice, some water. You can use broth if you want to add flavor, but you can also add. I always add a pinch of red pepper flakes. You could use any kind of hot sauce or any kind of seasoning that you want on it, and then you just are cooking down about 2 cups, 4 cups, whatever it is. I fill it up. Usually I'm like almost like shoving it in like when you overpack your suitcase to go to Tahiti. And I tighten it in there, and then they will cook down in the Instant Pot, and they are awesome fresh, and then they're really good after they marinate in the refrigerator overnight, and you warm them back up.
Cool. I just want to say to the people that are watching live, we can see your comments, and Matt, their comments are on the right. If you see, there's a comment tab. But if you guys have a question or a comment you want to do, then feel free. I'm going to show you guys the recipe that Matt is talking about here, and that he was using in his recipe. And this does look really, really good. So, and I like this too, because like I said, we didn't even talk about this, but I'm on like a health journey with some cardiac rehab and stuff. So I do happen to eat vegan, but this is a vegan and paleo recipe, which is kind of cool. And this is a cool looking website. I want to explore this a little bit. The Sophisticated Caveman. Do you follow more of the recipes there, or is this just a one-off for you?
Oh no, I've cooked several of his recipes. Now here's what I'll tell you about this site. They're tasty and they're healthy for the most part, but they are a little bit labor intensive. This is not your quick and easy weeknight meal kind of site. This is a meal prep site. So be warned. This one is actually, it's not terrible. It's the processing of the collards, but the actual recipe itself is not complicated at all.
Well,
but he has a really good shepherd's pie recipe, and you can make a vegan version of that that uses cauliflower and not potato. That's great. So that's one of my.
It almost looks like bacon, but it's probably not, since it's a vegan recipe. What are those little brownish chunks in there?
My guess is those are onions. Those are probably the onions.
Okay, caramelized. Okay, and this is the from that same recipe. You can see what's in it. We got collard greens, olive oil, 1 onion, 3 cloves of garlic. Yeah. Smoked paprika. You know what? I use a lot of smoked paprika nowadays.
Forgot about the paprika.
Yeah, what do you mean you forgot to say it, or you forgot to use it?
No, I forgot to say it. I forgot that was on the list.
Yeah, but that's going to give you that nice smoky, where the smoked ham hocks probably were giving you that flavor. Now you have the smoke. You could probably, if you were improvising, liquid smoke goes a long way for a lot of people too. Red pepper, vinegar, apple cider vinegar, water, maple syrup. How about that? Sea salt and black pepper. This isn't too bad. 25-minute recipe. And like you said, that'll last you a couple days. And if you're meal prepping, and again, this is not like a vegan program or something with the Tower Garden. We just want you guys growing more plants. And so even if you had this and like just have a nice healthily prepared protein like grilled chicken or something, that'd be a killer meal. And you could probably meal prep a bunch of different dishes from it. I'm thinking of my friend Andrew, who's really into meal prepping right now. This looks right up his alley. Hopefully he's going to see this replay. And This looks like you were okay. So you use the Instant Pot on this, huh? This is an Instant Pot recipe.
It is an Instant Pot recipe. I'm sure you could do it in. You wouldn't necessarily have to do it in the Instant Pot. That's just what makes it quick. So you saute the stems. That's the stems, the onions, and the garlic, in a little bit of the olive oil and salt and pepper, and get that just until they start to soften up. You don't cook them all the way to mush. You just cook them until they start to soften up. Then you pack in your collard green leaves that you've chopped up on top of that. Add the liquid and the rest of the seasoning. Close it up and cook it, and that's what it looks like after it's cooked.
And if you're not an Instant Pot user, you guys, the Instant Pot has a setting on it where it has like a saute setting. So it gets real high. You can really brown things and get a nice caramelization on it. And then you go into like pressure cooker mode, you put the lid on, and it will be like it cooked for 5 hours and in about 20 minutes. It's pretty amazing what happens. All right, so let's talk about collard greens. So this is well, just tell us about your process. You happen to order seedlings. I don't know if you do that all the time, or just tell us about your process here.
Yeah, so for a while, when I first got my tower, I was growing the seeds that came with the tower, and I ordered seeds and grew some things from seeds. But I was getting a lot of really leggy, what they call leggy seedlings, where they're super thin. The stems are thin, and so they don't necessarily grow properly. It's because I didn't have them in a good spot to get enough light. So I started ordering seedlings from Living Towers, which is a place down in Key Largo that grows seedlings for tower garden users. And so that's where I get my seedlings from, my collards from. And they come pretty much ready to go in the tower. I usually let them sit for a day before I drop them in. But and they usually come within a day or two, and they are packed in their rock wool already, and then I get them out, put them in, and about usually it takes about probably 6 to 8 weeks to get to what you can see, what you saw in that other picture.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of these nice the growing side of things. So it costs you $2.10 to order a collard green plant. And now some people might think, well, gosh, it's only cost me $4 to buy a bunch of collard greens at the store. But like Matt said earlier, once these are growing, he's going to harvest off these things. And I would imagine, since it thrives in cold and warm weather, Matt does live down in South Florida, so he's year-round growing outside. And he will grow off of that plant probably to the point where he has to take the plant out because it's getting so big that it's going to be almost too big on the base of the plant for the tower garden. And that's going to take probably a year, probably a couple seasons, But notice what it says. So for $2.10, you're going to get way more than, just one harvest. You're going to get at least $20 worth of collard greens off of that thing, I'd say, minimum. But notice I like to always look at what the specs are on a plant when we're going to grow it. And this particular one, it says it's cold tolerant, 32 degrees to 60. It's the average temperature normal is 60 to 80 degrees. And it is also heat tolerant, 80 to 95 degrees. So that's amazing. The only thing that Matt has to worry about, and see, I'm in Jacksonville. I can grow them up here too. In fact, I'm growing them right now. The only problem is if it's going to go below 32. It's pretty rare for Matt to get 32 where he lives. We get it about 3 times maybe in the season up here in the winter. And I just take one of those blankets from Home Depot and I just pop it over my tower garden, and it stays warm in there. I do sometimes in the winter, I'll put an aquarium heater inside my tower garden water, and that just keeps the water at a constant about 70 degrees. So that helps me out. Time to harvest 6 to 8 weeks. Felt like mine have been a little slow. I tried to, up here in the South, I mean, we're in North Florida. It's basically the Georgia-Florida line. And so it's kind of a big deal, this New Year's Day soup where you have collard greens with black-eyed peas. So I tried to grow collards for that, but I didn't have them ready. My plants are still, they're not like this, like yours. Mine are just about this big still. So I mistimed it. And you can figure that stuff out by when you go to buy your seeds, it says how long it's going to take until it's ready for harvest. So I just didn't read it properly and didn't really think it through. But it is definitely a performer. It's great. Collard greens, and they're pretty easy to grow. And I like to grow easy things on my tower garden.
Me too.
keeps it nice, and I don't like to go crazy. Ava asks, do we have seeds? Do we use seeds specifically for tower gardens? No, Ava. And Ava is a tower garden owner. She's got a great tower garden going. And I actually gave Ava her first set of seedlings because she got her tower garden from me. And I grew those from just regular seeds, just regular seeds. And I'm going to show you my process for doing the very same thing. If I go over to one of my favorite websites here, Johnny Seeds, I'm going to show you guys a little something here. Okay, that's a bok choy. I was going to go into a bok choy recipe, but we may not even make it there, and that's okay. Let's go for a collard. So if I go to collard greens, categories, collards. Okay, and this is something I love about growing from seed. Now, the good thing is when you're buying seedlings, especially from Living Towers, the owner of Living Towers is actually a lady named Dee, and I know her, and she's going to be on the show eventually. We just have to get our schedules lined up, so that would be pretty nice. I'm sure Matt's going to have some questions for her. But you have different variations you can get. They have 4 different types here. And no, so to answer your question, Ava, it's not specifically for a tower garden. Seeds are seeds, but different types of plants are different types of plants are better in hydroponics than others. So, you can search that. It looks like here I'm not seeing an option to do that for collards, so that's okay. So let me go with the basic collard seed. And when I go to here, it shows me the germination guide, the optimal range for germination. Looks like the best temperature would be, wow, way up near almost 90 degrees. So when it comes to growing your own seeds, Ava, just like Matt said earlier, Matt was growing seeds, but they were getting what we call leggy. And that's no good because then you have a weak plant, and that plant will always be weak the rest of its life because it started off poorly. So you want to be mindful of what temperature it wants to germinate at. And then once it has like those, when it first sprouts up, there's like a leaf. It's almost like it came out of the seed with like a part of the seed shell still on it. But then eventually you get these little baby leaves that get on there. As soon as you see those, it wants light. So if you don't have a grow light to put it under, you need to get it outside and just get it going. And once you get, the sun is free and it's powerful, and that's awesome. I'll show you sometime on this show my setup. I do have a grow light, but ultimately there's nothing like the sun. And it looks like days to maturity here is 55 days, and that's the average number of days from seeding date to harvest. Okay, so that's where I went wrong. That's 55 days. I only accounted for about 30 days. So I have about 15 more days, and then mine will really be fully ready. But the other thing is great that it will just keep going right after that. Another thing I like at this website, Johnny Seeds, is you can go over to the growing information. And if you're like me and like to nerd out a little bit on this stuff, I love just seeing it tells me the pH level. And that's a great thing about tower garden, is it? If you're growing in the dirt, I was always just at the mercy of whatever the bugs and beetles are doing in the dirt, But with a tower garden, I could just raise my pH up to 7 instead of 6, and it'll grow better, for this particular plant. Let's see, and it tells you how it grows, and it doesn't like to go below 32 and whatnot. So it's pretty cool stuff. All right, so let's Matt, do you have anything else, any tips or any observations about when you're growing collards, or any challenges, or do you have any trouble with disease or bugs or anything?
I've never had any kind of disease issues. I occasionally will have some minor bug issues. The only time I ever lost whole plants was when I actually lost my whole tower because my house sitter forgot to add water. Enough water to the reservoir while we were out of town, but that was not a major thing. The one thing I will tell you is, if you notice on a collard leaf, what has worked for me is, if I see where it looks like a bug has gotten to part of it, most of the time it's on a leaf and not the whole plant. So I just pull that leaf off and get it out of my tower because I do grow outside. So I do have to kind of keep an eye on the bug thing. But most of the time I have very little issue. Even if I have other things on my tower that are getting attacked, generally my collards and my kale do not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know about you, but I'm finding that I used to grow in the ground a little bit, and there's way less bugs and pests. I know some people are worried, you know, like, oh, I don't know about getting a tower garden. Well, actually, they don't worry about bugs as much up here in North Florida. In North Florida, they always ask, are the deer and the bunny rabbits going to eat all my produce? I don't find a problem with it. I mean, now we do live in like, we're not out in the woods or anything. We're in like a golf course community, but there are definitely deer roaming around. I know in South Florida you have iguanas, but when I was in South Florida, I didn't have a huge problem with the iguanas. I don't know if it's the water or what.
I haven't had any iguana issues. Now my tower's on a balcony. What I did have to run off my tower about a month or so ago was a squirrel. Oh. I realized that because I was seeing that some things were being eaten, and I kind of thought it might be the dog. But I looked out one day and there was a squirrel sitting on my tower just munching away, and I ran him off. I scared him to death. He jumped about 40 feet. So he hasn't been back. Okay. The other thing with collards, like any plant, is when you put it in your tower, think about where you're putting it because of how large it's going to be. I have had collards at the bottom. I've had collards at the top. Middle usually does best for me. If it's at the bottom, they will grow a little bit faster, but then you have to watch the roots because they are big plants and they will generate big roots that will suck the water out of your tower if you're not careful and keep them trimmed. So
yeah. So what that means is that when it's down, especially at the bottom, the roots will go down, and as you can you see on a tower garden, well, let me show you a picture. I'm going to show you kind of a funny picture as we close. We're not going to do another recipe. I think we're all good. This was really good, but I'll show you this picture of my wife. I'm getting ready for the tower garden chat, and my wife sends me this picture of what's happening in my backyard right now. We call that tower number. She said her caption was, "You got a tower down." So number 3 there is not looking good. It's hurting, but that's okay, because I'll tell you like how you deal with that. But you see how there's like a reservoir at the bottom down here. So if the collard green plant is at the bottom, the roots only have about potentially 12 to 16 inches to get to the water. And once they get in the water, they're just going to be in the water the whole time, and they're probably going to soak up more water than they actually even need. So all you do is, when you fill the water, all you do is take the little cap off, you reach in there. I just grab a handful of roots and rip them out.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Or you can even pull the whole plant right out of the tower garden and trim the roots and put it back in, but that's a little more difficult. In closing, I just want to say, people are always worried, like, what if I'm going to mess up my tower garden? They feel like they have to be perfect. Listen, that's my number 3 tower garden right there. That's what it looks like when it runs out of water. That's probably been without water for a couple hours, and the plants all just droop down and they're not happy. But I'm going to go out right after this, fill it up with water, put some more nutrient blend in there, and in a couple hours, they're going to be back to being totally normal. So it's no big deal. It's very forgiving to grow with the tower garden, and it's really easy to have a lot of success. So we hope you guys enjoyed this, a little bit of collard green recipe. Make sure you look up those recipes. If you need a tower garden, get with the person that invited you on here, and make sure you like and follow us on our Plant-Based Power page here. We're going live about every 2 weeks or so right now, and just trying to provide you guys with good support and information. If you have a suggestion for a topic, just leave us a message at the Facebook page, and we'll be glad to try to work that into the schedule. But Matt, thanks again for coming on. It was
Absolutely.
Awesome. I wish you could have we could have been together and we could have eaten some collard greens during this.
Right.
That would have been nice.
I know. Next time I'll send you some.
There you go. I'll get them a couple days. I'll freeze them or something.
There you go.
I don't know if it's gonna work. All right. Everybody have a great time. Great day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again, Matt.
Yep.
Adios. Keep on growing, guys.